Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. We are here on Thursday, October 7th, getting ready for Week 5 of the NFL season. Week 5 ranking show coming at you right now. I am Michael Beller. I am here with Brandon Funston. Funston, what's up?
What's going on, guys?
And also Jake Seeley with us. Maybe he's got a little bit more to say than Funston this morning. What's going on, Jake?
I just like the fact that you're hesitating about you're just trying to get back in the saddle over there. Let's see who we check in with. Oh wait, who do I do this show with?
By the way, what's up is kind of like a hey, I was throwing one right back. Hey, I didn't know you wanted me to go off on some little tangent about something. I'm happy.
Well, he
to
hasn't
do
been
that.
here
it's
forever.
okay.
I mean, you could said a little bit more.
Yeah, it's okay. It's eight in the morning where you are, so it's okay. We'll let you ease into the show a little bit as we. That's how much Funston cares about all you guys out there.
Yeah,
by the way, it's
right.
doing this at 8 in the morning local time. Jake,
Coffee.
It's 11 where Jake is. It's 10 where I am. We've been up for hours. Funston's 8 in the morning. He just gets right on the computer and brings the Week 5.
and you skipped over the week
knowledge.
that I could actually say anything about Notre Dame because then they went and lost to Cincinnati. So we really have nothing to talk about for either one of us, Mike.
He was
Yeah,
talking about him while you were gone. It just, I think he didn't have the impact that he was hoping it would have on me.
I mean, I could have told you at the start of this season that any team that's led by Jack Cohen is not sort of the team that you want to really be believing in.
I said at the beginning of the season, you're a graduate transfer from Wisconsin. What does that tell you? No offense to Jack Cohen, but come on. And then people were like, well, what about Russell Wilson? It's like, who was a graduate transfer who went to Wisconsin? He didn't come from Wisconsin.
No, not at all. And man, what a glorious year that was. We can just talk about that Russell Wilson, Wisconsin year if you guys want, but I don't think anyone else wants that. So let's move on. Let's get into some Week 5 NFL talk here. Let's start talking about the rankings. We got a lot to get to today. We're going to start at the quarterback position. We're going to start with two quarterbacks who are the future of their franchises. One of them we know for sure is starting this week. The other one we are 99.9999999% sure is starting this week as well. Let's just talk about them as a heads-up battle. Jake, you can start this one off. Justin Fields or Trey Lance, who has the better Week 5?
Week 5 specifically is Trey Lance. Trey Lance just was a top 20 quarterback in a half of a game, and that's really what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. And part of it is something we talked about in the preseason. We said Trey Lance versus Justin Fields, which has been a discussion a lot. And in the preseason, I admittedly had said, if you gave me talent, it's Justin Fields versus Trey Lance. If you factor in the context of who they play for, it's Trey Lance over Justin Fields if we knew both are starting. Right now, we know both are starting, at least for Week 5. Going forward, Fields got the stamp. Lance doesn't. But it's Lance as starter. And, long-term for this season, I still think it's Fields because he's officially got the job. But for Week 5, that's all that matters. It's Week 5, it's Trey Lance.
Yeah, and we've seen Justin Fields be a reluctant runner so far. I mean, the rushing yards props on Justin Fields have been way off. I mean, they're expecting him to run for 40+, and he's just not doing it. So we haven't seen that happen yet either. We saw Trey Lance put up 40 yards in a half, last week. Mm-hmm. So he looked terrible. And he could look absolutely awful against this Arizona Cardinals defense. But I still think this could be one of those ugly in reality, but still works out okay in fantasy.
Yeah, I already said that for somebody Funston. It's like, did you see the ducks he's throwing? I was like, it's a good thing your league doesn't count for duck throws in fantasy. It counts for that rushing upside, though.
Right.
Got to believe we're going to see a little bit more running out of Fields this week. That first start against Cleveland, throw it out the window. Looked like they were basically running an Andy Dalton offense with Justin Fields playing quarterback. A little bit more last week, not quite as much. Excuse me, as we would expect to see. I think we see it a little bit more from him this week against the Raiders. But exciting times certainly in Chicago and San Francisco with these two guys starting, and both of them certainly viable fantasy starters. Woo, excuse me, guys, depending on what else you've got going on. Yeah, I'm like working on something here. I don't know what, the throat, it's getting back in the groove here after being out for a week. You was really in the groove
that disgusting season. Hawaiian air got down there through us.
Right, it totally. I don't even know what. I don't know. Now I'm back in the Midwest. I don't even know what to do with this stuff. Back in a groove this year, or in a groove maybe for the first time, is Sam Darnold. And here's my question for you guys. And Funston, why don't you take this one first? So Sam Darnold has played like a QB1 this season. He's done it on the strength of 5 rushing touchdowns, which, we can debate about how sustainable that is for him. But if you have Sam Darnold on your team, obviously you've either picked him up or you drafted him as a backup. So who would have to be the other quarterback on your team that you'd be starting Sam Darnold over with consistency?
I mean, maybe like a Trevor Lawrence or a Joe Burrow if you did some kind of a combo like that, or but look, to the upside of his rushing TDs, I mean, he has 5. He had 5 in his career in 3 seasons before that. You know, he's running at the goal line. If Christian McCaffrey's there, are they even bothering messing around with Sam Darnold doing that all the time? Look at that little RPO play they run at the goal line. This is the league that figures things out pretty quickly. I expect that they'll be ready for that going forward because, you know, it's kind of become a thing now with them. So I would set the over-under on rushing TDs the rest of the year probably at like 2.5. You know, that's where we're at. But give him credit. I mean, he's averaging almost 300 yards per game. He's got a good group of guys to throw with. Joe Brady's a legit offensive coordinator, unlike what he had with the Jets. So I think he's a solid kind of middle teens quarterback going forward. And I put him in that range with the Trevor Lawrences and the Joe Burrows and guys that you can look at the matchup and say, you know what, I like Darnold better this week. I'm going to go with Darnold.
Oh, I thought
Jake,
you were going right. I thought you were setting up that. I read them. You're going right into the next question?
Next question, same exact thing for you, but let's talk about Daniel Jones. How far has he risen to the extent that you would be thinking about starting him over whoever else your quarterbacks are?
It's going to be matchup dependent, and both of them are in the same conversation as the names that Funston just threw out, or Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow. You could say probably even like a Kirk Cousins, even though he had the hot start in the first 3 games. But all these kind of quarterbacks that are kind of matchup dependent. And Daniel Jones, I actually have over Sam Darnold this week going against the Cowboys. I know Diggs has been a great lockdown corner, and that's actually why I have Kenny Golladay a little bit lower than people might expect this week. But the thing with Daniel Jones is his rushing I trust more than Sam Darnold's, because his rushing, quote unquote, between the 20s versus the Sam Darnold at the goal line rushing touchdowns. And that's what it comes down to. So they're always going to be very close. And those are all the same names I was looking at. I mean, I could tell you it was like Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, Joe Burrow, Tannehill, Derek Carr in order. It's just that group. It's the guys basically once you get outside the top 10, 11, and so all those guys are going to be matchup dependent.
Since we're talking about these guys, let's bring in a question here from Disco Dave. Dave, thanks for watching us. We've talking about a group of these quarterbacks: Fields, Lawrence, Lance, Jones. Rest of season, if you're leaning on one, who are you leaning on, Brandon?
Well, it says if your quarterback doesn't get rushing yards.
Well, yeah, but I mean, 2 of these guys or 3 of these guys are going to get rushing yards, right?
No, but it says
maybe all 4 of them.
Yeah. But I was reading this as like his league doesn't give you the rushing yards for fantasy.
Oh, I don't know. We'll just take it as it is. Those 4 guys, rest of season. Who are you leaning on if you can lean on one?
I'm reading like my quarterback doesn't get me rushing yards. I want to pick somebody.
That's all like a Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield situation. Matt Ryan.
Oh gosh, I might throw out the shock here, but I might go Daniel Jones. Look at I think the rushing stuff is going to stay. I know it's not designed rushing stuff, but I think he has the green light to just take off and scramble.
That's why it's going to stay, because it's not designed, and the offensive line is still getting shuffled again in week 5. So that's why it's going to stay.
But look at Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay. You got a bunch of other receivers back in the mix now that are looking like legit weapons. There's a lot, and the game script should be a lot of passing. So in a weird way, I kind of like Daniel Jones the best the rest of the way. I would maybe say Trey Lance, but we just don't think that he's going to be the starter the rest of the way.
It's Daniel Jones. This is why he was one of the 2 or 3. I don't remember how many I wrote up, but he was he was the first quarterback I went to in dumpster diving from last year, because people were drafting him as a fringe QB1 last year for what he's doing right now is why people were going crazy over Daniel Jones as one of the best late round quarterbacks last year. And that's what he is right now.
Having the year that a lot of people thought he was going to have last season, certainly. And you got to
make that clear. I still don't like Daniel Jones. Just
right. But for fantasy, he's been working out all right. Different. There's plenty of reason to believe he could continue working out all right the remainder of the season. Guys, you both sort of low on Joe Burrow this week. When I was putting the show together last night, you were both went down like the QB 17, 18 range on Joe Burrow for this week. Jake, what's the case for? I mean, if you have Joe Burrow, you probably have a second guy. So maybe benching Joe Burrow in week 5.
It mostly just comes down to this is one of the ones where people are like, oh, why don't you like this guy? Why is he so low? Well, it's just look at the names in front of him. And that's the bigger issue here is, Sam Darnold, toss up with him right now. But Sam Darnold is still, we just talked about why he's been playing well for fantasy purposes. And they're back to back for me. Trey Lance, I'm going Trey Lance for a full game. Daniel Jones, we just talked about. Once you get past those 4, Now where are you benching him? Or where you start benching the
him?
other option?
Yeah.
Herbert, Rodgers, Wilson, Hurts. That's the issue. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with Joe Burrow. It just has to do with who's in front of him.
Yeah, and just to be honest, I don't think he played that well for 3 quarters last week against Jacksonville. I'm not dropping him down because I don't think he's because I think he's playing bad. It's more he's been QB 16 to this point so far, or right in that kind of mid-level teens range, and that's kind of where I have him ranked. I think QB 19, but to Jake's point, it's more about I'm ranking him kind of normal to where he's delivered to this year, but also I like a few more guys this week a little bit better. Like guys like Trey Lance are coming into the mix that haven't been there, so it bumps him down just a spot or two.
It's still even though we had Joe Burrow coming into the season in that low end 1, high end 2 range, it's still, this is different, I think, than we would have expected for him this year. Like, you didn't expect him to be, in the, like Sam Darnold to have risen to this level where he could be pushing Joe Burrow down. We didn't necessarily expect Daniel Jones to have risen to a level where he could slide Joe Burrow down. And yeah, it makes sense. It all adds up. Certainly, it's not like this is an illogical case being made against Joe Burrow, but maybe he is, at least we're seeing here in week 5 that he's not necessarily the locked in starter that a lot of us, and certainly I can speak for the 3 of us on the show, thought he was going to be at the start of the year. So we got a lot of fun things going on at the quarterback position, head captained by Justin Fields and Trey Lance, both getting starts. And maybe, just maybe, at least for one of them, we see them be a consistent fantasy starter for the rest of the season. Roman, back with us here. Obviously, we're here in week 5 of the NFL season. You're getting ready for fantasy football around the corner, starting tonight between the Rams and the Seahawks. And whenever you're in any situation where you're ready to be ready, get ready with Roman. Roman will hook you up with a U.S. licensed healthcare professional. You can get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your own home. That U.S. licensed healthcare professional is going to work with you to find the best treatment plan, and if medication is appropriate, it ships to you with free 2-day shipping. The whole process straightforward and discreet, and also very, very simple. All you got to do is go to getroman.com/fantasy and complete an online visit. Take care of your ED without leaving home. Complete an online visit today to connect with a doctor and take care of it. Go to getroman.com/fantasy for $15 off your first month of treatment. Again, you can get started right now. Getroman.com/fantasy for $15 off your first month of treatment. There's the next one. Sportive business means demanding excellence from your craft and wardrobe. Your fits need to be versatile, blending timeless style and comfort so that you look as good as you feel. And for that, there is Cuts Clothing. Cuts has taken a classic men's fashion staple, the plain tee, and refined it, combining premium quality with a minimalist aesthetic. Cuts shirts, polos, hoodies, and crew sweatshirts are made for the man who works hard, plays hard, and never settles for less. I feel like Don Draper reading this one. In 2016, Cuts founder Steve Borelli set out to create clothes ready for every occasion the modern man faces. He started by reinventing the t-shirt. The end result, what GQ magazine calls the only shirt worth wearing. It's not just a lifestyle. It's not just clothing. It's office leisure apparel for the sport of business. Get 15% off your first order by going to cutsclothing.com/fantasy. That's cutsclothing.com/fantasy for 15% off the only shirt worth wearing. All right, guys, let's get to the running back position here. Typically, we stay away from the Thursday night game because we want this show to have full utility all the way through to Sunday. But we have to talk about, I think, the Seattle backfield because it sounds as though Chris Carson unlikely to play in the Seahawks-Rams game on Thursday night. How are we handling this, Funston? You feel comfortable with Alex Collins as a go in your fantasy lineups?
Yeah, I think so. He looks good. He looked good last week. He looked good in the preseason. I think he's like I will probably rank him. I haven't taken out Carson yet, but I'll probably put him right around where I had Carson, which is kind of 19, 20, 21 at the running back position. Not only has he looked good, the Rams haven't looked particularly good stopping running backs in fantasy either. So I think you can feel decently comfortable about him filling in for Carson and getting pretty much the Carson work. There really hasn't been anybody else that is like barking for touches in that backfield right now.
Yeah, so I actually have Carson at 24. I'll probably similarly put in Collins, but I'm a little bit lower just because the one thing about Seattle, and the teams even said this, and for for everything that Pete Carroll does, like he has 9 times out of 10 been completely honest, which that's what we love Pete Carroll about. Like he's one of the most honest coaches when it comes to his predicted uses and all the type of stuff. Is before this, it was that Alex Collins wasn't going to see a bigger role because he's just filling the role that was meant for Rashad Penny. So I say that to set up this, is I am putting him in where Carson is, which is a fine workload, but still Carson's not getting 20 touches every single week. So I still think whether it's Travis Homer or DJ Dallas, somebody else is going to be involved, where I'm only saying that is Funston and I are only difference by about 2 or 3 spots. But for the people that are like Alex Collins, top 20, top 15 is like not even good enough because it's the Seattle backfield, I still think somebody else is involved a little bit.
So, I would expect
go
it
ahead,
to probably be Travis Homer because he's their best pass blocker, and the Rams line has given Seattle's offensive line fits forever. So it's probably Homer. But, yeah, I can see that. I would say that there's probably a bigger discrepancy between what Travis Homer brings to the table compared to Alex Collins and what Alex Collins brings to the table compared to Chris Carson. So, I would expect that maybe Collins gets a little bit bigger role than what you would expect a Chris Carson role to be.
Jake, just looking at those next 3 guys on your list that you have behind Carson right now, they're Mike Davis, Miles Sanders, Melvin Gordon. Are you starting any of those 3 over Alex Collins?
No. And to be honest with you, I might even go Alex Collins. He might not be 24. He might move up 1 spot in front of Josh Jacobs.
All right,
maybe
so
even
Collins,
Chuba. It's
Well,
low in
gonna
RB2,
depend on-
but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see if CMC ends up coming back this week. Someone else who you have in that range as a low-end RB2, Jake, is Kareem Hunt, and that sort of means you hate him. You just hate Kareem Hunt because the consensus on him is RB15. You've got him down at RB21. What gives?
I skipped right past that question where somebody put in the comments was like, "Why do you hate Kareem Hunt?" So
forcing you to answer it here.
I know. Well, so I'm going to tell you why. There's a process behind it, and I could possibly be wrong, but everybody, is looking at the usage recently, and it's been a lot bigger split than a lot of people expected. But Nick Chubb is still getting his, and what it comes down to is Kareem Hunt is the second option. He's getting plenty of work, but you also need the Browns to essentially be running 50-plus plays because it is going to be run game first. But what I look at here, and if you dig into it, if you go to True Media, 2 defenses that have allowed their opponents, to run the fewest amount of plays are the Browns, and then the Chargers are actually top 10 in allowing opponents to run plays. So I'm not saying all that to basically, I think the under is potentially intriguing because I think a lot of people are looking at this team thinking offense, thinking how these teams have looked, and thinking shootout, where I think this could be a slower pace than what people are expecting opportunity-wise. And that's really all it comes down to. When you take away 3 touches for Kareem Hunt, he just slides down to RB low. That's really what it is. It's projections, and it has to do with the game flow here.
Funston, I'm going to jump in with a question for you from Austin Daly. Thanks for watching, Austin. Related to this game, James Robinson, Nick Chubb. If you can only start one, who you starting?
Oh man, I think I have to go look because this is a great question. I think I have these guys back to back, and I might have made my gut said James Robinson. That's what I'm at. I'm at Robinson 7 and
I
Chubb
have
8.
Robinson at 10 and Chubb at 12 in a full point PPR.
Yeah. Oh, so in the full point PPR, yeah, I'm with you because I'm ranking for half PPR, and it would only be to Robinson's advantage in a full point PPR, obviously. Yep. So, yeah.
All right, there you go, Austin. If you got to have one this week, our guys like James Robinson. Damian Williams going to get his first start for the Bears this week. Bears playing the Raiders. We know he's likely to be the main running back in Chicago for the next 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks, maybe through the Bears Week 10 bye. What does a good game look like? What gives you confidence? You're starting Damien Williams this week, almost certainly, if you just spend all that fab to get him, right, Funston? So, what does a game against the Raiders look like that makes you say, yeah, I'm ready to start Damien Williams next week also?
Jake, do you have your projections? Because this is what I came up with as a good game, and you tell me how far it's off of your projections, all right? 14 carries, 63 yards, 3 catches, 25 yards, touchdown. The touchdown's like, I know you have like 0.5 or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm laughing because the projections are 13.4 carries of 58.1 yards, and then 3.1 catches and 22.5 receiving yards.
All right, so that's your projection game, and I gave you the good version of that, which was only slightly higher, so pretty close.
And
Well,
that's
you
your
feel good
RB,
then. I mean,
and that's RB15, by the way. That
and you
tells
feel
that-
good there too, Jake. I mean, if he hits those projections, you feel comfortable with him as a guy who you are like starting until he proves otherwise that he shouldn't be.
So I'll kind of turn the question around on you. The only way I don't feel good about Damian Williams is if it's a 50-50 split with Herbert. That's the only way I don't feel good about it. So if it's a 65-35 split and he just goes out there and has 18 touches and only gets 40 yards and it's just a really ugly looking day and somehow Las Vegas just kind of got after him because they can get after the quarterback. So maybe that affects the run game. So, but the touches, I'm going to be more interested in the touches than the yards in this game.
You just described a Mike Davis game, by the way.
18 touches for 45 yards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, that's been the Mike Davis game with Cordell Patterson eating away way too much of that for those of us who are invested in Mike Davis. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I do think that I talked to Kevin Fishbane, our Bears beat reporter, earlier this week on the Tuesday episode of this show where we talk with our beat writers, and he said that he expects Herbert to have a larger role as the number 2 than Damien Williams did as the number 2, but that Damian Williams should be comfortably the number 1 back so long as David Montgomery is out. And I think that's a fair expectation going into it before we've seen it. We'll see exactly how things play out here. I'm going to skip a question on our sheet because I've got a little work to do over here. So why don't you guys both take a whack at this one? You are loving. We know all about playoff Lenny. You guys are loving week 5, Lenny. Both of you have Leonard Fournette ranked comfortably as an RB2. What's the case for Leonard Fournette as an easy starter this week? Take this one first, Jake.
Basically, no Gio into the factor at this point, and also no Ronald Jones in the factor at this point, too. Like, don't get fooled by the basically garbage touchdown that he got. Not garbage time, but just garbage touchdown that he got. It's just this backfield is finally cleared up. And it is finally Leonard Fournette we can trust. And I hate saying that because you said confident, and I just said the word trust. And I don't ever want to throw those words into a backfield having to do with Bruce Arians. But you know what? For the fact that like we always worried about getting Shanahan again, like that's the thing. Like we're going to get Bruce Arians and whatever it might be as soon as we trust him. But, as it stands, we have to trust what's happening. And right now, Leonard Fournette is the best option in that backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trailing the Leonard Fournette comment. I've been the tail on this thing for weeks.
I've been there with you.
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette comment is a pretty good team name if you have Leonard Fournette on your
Funston
team.
and I are like the comments going. We're like at the fishing pole and we're still hanging way down at the bottom. Like, no, we're getting dragged along here. We don't really want to.
Well, I mean, but 63 snaps last week. You can't argue that. You can't argue that he was over 40 receiving yards. He's been over 24 receiving yards every game with Gio out, as Jake mentioned. He's the receiving guy, and he's also the top rusher. And it's it's not a daunting matchup this week either. So you kind of have to begrudgingly give Leonard Fournette his. I mean, the numbers don't lie.
You said it's not daunting, and I thought you said donkey at first, and I was like, you know what? Honestly, I mean, to trust, like I feel like a donkey trusting him.
Donkey Comet, the new album from Leonard Fournette, starting fantasy running back. All right, guys, you did a great job there tap dancing a little bit for me to have some time to come up with everyone's favorite segment, Make a Case For. We've got 4 random guys in here. Yeah, you heard the papers. You heard them going crazy there, right? We've got 4 random dudes here. Jake and Brandon have, I guess if they know where I'm going with it, so maybe they could narrow it down to a range of players who I'm going to ask him to talk about.
You give me way more credit in like reading this sheet than you should.
but you know that this is going to be someone who you maybe like a little bit more
so
than
maybe
consensus,
somebody like
probably somewhere
look,
in the RB
here's the hit though.
to 28 range.
I was also dancing around while I was pulling up a stat, trying to waste time to get to the stat. By the way, Leonard Fournette is the 20th highest in snap percentage for running backs, which is something I don't think we would have ever said.
Never would have thought that at all. All right, let's get back to Make a Case For. 4 guys. Jake, you're up first. Brandon,
pass.
You're up first. Brandon, you're up first.
I did pass.
Now that I see the guy, because I really want Brandon to talk about the new-ish Ravens starting running back.
Yeah, you
Latavius
might want to put it
Murray.
on the screen.
Right there, Latavius Murray. Make the case, Brandon.
I feel like a defense attorney defending a bad guy. But you know what? I mean, look at Latavius Murray is now the number 1. He is, he's he was Gus Edwards before Gus Edwards got hurt. I always call Latavius Murray the NFC's version of Gus Edwards. And
I like that.
And being the number one guy in the Ravens backfield means touchdown upside. He already has 3 touchdowns in this offense, and he really hasn't touched the ball a whole lot. But, by the way, he gets 18 carries last week, has a season high in snaps. Seems like it's a little bit more definitive. We saw him as the number one guy. Tyson Williams is out. I looked it up. The Ravens running back rushing touchdowns the last 4 years, they've been no worse than 7th. I mean, this offense produces goal line opportunities. Mm-hmm. So, you're going to have to live with no passing down work a whole lot. I mean, they don't throw the running backs very much. You're going to have to live with some weeks where it's 60 yards and no touchdown. But a lot of weeks it's going to be 60 yards and a touchdown, which we've seen already. We've seen that basically 3 weeks now. So,
I mean, if you think about guys like that,
Latavius.
Are you starting Latavius over Melvin Gordon?
Yeah.
Other guys like that?
I am this week.
Here's the quick version of what Funston just said. Everybody was falling out of their chairs for Gus Edwards. This is now Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
It's just a different name. Same guy.
Yeah. Same guy.
We starting Latavius Murray over James Conner?
Yes.
Yes. They're kind of similar, but
that's what I'm saying. These are guys who
similar,
aren't
but Murray just has a little bit bigger share. Murray's got a bigger share of the work.
All right, so Latavius Murray leading the charge for those guys. Jake, there's 3 guys left for you. Let's take this one. Oh, yeah. We've talked about him a little bit. Michael Carter. Is the takeover happening? Make the case, Jake. What do you got?
It's been happening. It's been happening for weeks. The issue here with Michael Carter, it's a slow burn. This is what we talked about at the beginning of the season. You can go back. You could check the tape. You could go back and play it back. I said, week 6? How many times did I say week 6? I said worst case, week 8. I was putting it in the 6 to 8 range. We're now in week 5. It's a slow burn. It's slowly happening. It's slowly getting there. And all that being said, as a reminder, and this is coming from one of the biggest, I think this entire show is a giant Michael Carter fan because I know Funston loves him too, but one of the biggest fans about him is I said, remember, he's never going to be a bell cow though. So the slow burn is still only going to get you to 60, 65% because he's similar to Austin Eckler. And that's why there's so much upside with him is because he's a very similar running back. The Jets offensive line is a little bit more concerning. The offense is a little bit more concerning. You swap Austin Eckler and Michael Carter teams, and I think people will be talking about Michael Carter's RB1 and a lot. Eckler would be better on the Jets than Carter is on the Jets, but you get the point, and that's the excitement here. Michael Carter, great, solid, locked-in RB2. I think potentially starting week 6, it might even happen this week.
Ooh, I like that. That's how you make a case for a guy right there. That is.
I love that he got the goal line carry,
We're going to put that on the postseason highlight reel of make a case for. Right there. All right, let's try to make a case here.
I was about to say Saquon. We even got Barkley excited. She came over here for a visit.
Do you ever call her Saquon just for fun?
No, that was the very first time. I'm almost actually I almost said Saquon Barkley.
All right, let's fill in this blank here, you guys. And Funston, why don't you take this one first? I'm starting Miles Sanders if.
Is this only this week, or is this permanent going forward?
This is this week. I'm starting Miles Sanders here in week 5 if
I believe this game's going to be somewhat competitive. I mean, if I don't have 2 or 3 guys that I have ranked ahead of him on my roster, I mean, I don't know how I want to say this. I don't really right now. I'd like to not be in a position to have to start Miles Sanders. I think it's a bad matchup. I think he's coming off a couple bad games. I mean, Sanders right now is in fantasy doghouses. I mean, he's got 9 carries in the last 2 weeks. Not good. So I don't know, Jake. I mean, I'm still ranking him top end RB3, but I don't think you can't.
Are you playing Gainwell over him? Would you play if you had both? Would you play Gainwell before you played Sanders?
No, I wouldn't. Just it's. I mean, look, if you want to imagine that Philadelphia is just chasing in this game the whole time, they might actually want to have Gainwell out there more often than Sanders. But I think I always believe that if Sanders is their best running back and they haven't been getting anything rush production out of them the last couple weeks, they come in with a concerted effort to try to get that guy going.
That's what it comes down to. You start him if you think the Eagles are going to be competitive in this game. The Eagles.
Can you guys figure out why this is a 3.5 point spread?
Why it shouldn't be more?
I feel like it should be. This is Carolina, for anyone who doesn't know off the top of their head. Philly's playing Carolina this week. And I feel like it should be more.
I honestly don't. I think Carolina's exceeded expectations, certainly. I think part of it is if it wasn't for the fact that Sam Darnold running for touchdowns, it still comes down to I look at these two teams. I don't think there's that big a talent gap between the two teams. If you go back to how about it this way? Look at the rosters and then say who should be winning more games. I just think the Panthers are doing everything right and the Eagles are doing everything wrong. And that's really why you have the difference. This week? Yeah. So if you think the Eagles can be competitive or winning, it's Miles Sanders. It's if you think they're getting blown out and losing. And I think the Eagles keep this game competitive. I have him at RB26. I don't feel great about it, but he's down there with split backfield options like Melvin Gordon and stuff like that's where you're at now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did
and
you
still
say Stefan Gilmore going to play this week? He can't play this week, can he?
Oh,
no, he's got 2 weeks. He could because he was also the COVID situation. He's got to clear too, so he's got 2 weeks.
Right. I forgot about that.
Not even week 6. He's out there by week 7.
I tell you, as a Seattle fan, seeing Carolina in season pull in C.J. Henderson and Stefan Gilmore
and Stefan Gilmore in the same season.
Give me a break. This is killing me.
Yeah. Could certainly use guys like that against the Rams on Thursday Night Football. All right, let's go to this. I know we've already touched on some of these guys. I like to box you guys in. I know we've touched on some of these guys. Don't go back to anyone we've talked about. An RB3 who you think should be in lineups this week. No, don't give me Michael Carter. You already made that case. Don't give me Latavius Murray. Jake, you take this one first. Someone who's consensus graded as an RB3 that you think needs to be in lineups this week.
Well, I was going to say Michael Carter's the one that's the highest difference that I got over.
Yeah, I know. We already talked about him, though.
Yeah, I know. So I'm looking for somebody else. I mean, you're the one that set that up, that problem-wise. So, all right, well, I'll give you this one. Is he consensus? He is. Javante Williams. Melvin Gordon missing practice, but Melvin Gordon still sounds like he's going to play. But this backfield is similar to Michael Carter. So, it's going to take some time. Slow burn, week 6. It might actually take a little bit longer because it's as long as Melvin Gordon stays out there productive. He's been productive to this point. But even if Melvin Gordon is out there, the split between them hasn't been bad enough where it's actually a better floor without the ceiling of the Arizona backfield between these two. So it's the safer options of the Arizona guys, but it's the lower ceiling. So I think Javante Williams, if you need the option. I was going to say Elijah Mitchell, but I feel like everybody's going to put him in, slap him into consensus if he's actually out there.
Plus, it's a who knows. I would say Samaje Perine right here, but we don't know on that one either.
But that's a good answer. I mean, let's hear the mixing out Perine case. I mean, that's a good answer. We're still speculating 72 hours out from Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, we know what Samaje Perine is in this offense. We saw at the end of last year, it wasn't that bad. I mean, he's not Joe Mixon, but he can come in.
Perine or Hubbard?
I'm probably going to go Hubbard. The interesting thing about Hubbard is the Rodney Smith thing happening last week, which was and I reached out to Joe Person, who covers Carolina for The Athletic, and he's like, they like Rodney Smith as their pass catching back. So the trouble with Hubbard is if they don't have a lead or it's even, then he's probably out of the game. But I think this week that's going to be okay for Hubbard, so he should get the volume. I would probably
Perine or Sanders.
I think the good question is Perine or Collins. The two guys filling in.
Oh, I don't even think it's close.
Who do you think's better?
Collins. By far.
Collins has
I do
to.
too. Yeah.
That's
what I'm saying. I'm ranking Perine right now in the low 30s as he's likely to play. I probably have him right there where I have Collins in the low 20s.
Yeah, because I was going to say my biggest thing is I think Chris Evans is a bigger threat than anybody in the backfield for Seattle, because I think Chris Evans versus Perine on a pure talent situation is better all-around running back as Chris Evans. But obviously Chris Evans has the same Trey Sermon concern of rookie stepping into the NFL. Is he ready to pass, block, all that type of stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get one more Collins question here while we're talking about him. Collins or Trey Sermon? This one for Buzzer Beater. Thanks for listening, Buzzer Beater.
Yeah,
Collins versus Trey. Collins, and I agree with Collins, and I have Trey Sermon with Elijah Mitchell playing still as the lead because I think he fits better with Trey Lance, and I think we saw enough. That second half, you saw what Trey Sermon could be with a quarterback. We talked about it last week when you weren't here, Beller. We talked about it the week before. Sermon didn't play, as you know, Beller, didn't play a lot with the center or quarterback under center, and he looks better with, I think, as long as Lance is at quarterback, I want Sermon. When Garoppolo comes back, it's Mitchell time.
Yeah, and we can just scrap that question. We're pitting me and Jake on our Sermon ranks because this is all fluid. I mean,
Right.
I don't know if it's Sermon leading the way with Mitchell and, Lance there, or like, who knows what, like there'll be a little bit more description of what's going to happen with this backfield before Sunday. That's going to influence my rankings for sure.
Well, thanks, Shadow Host. I was already going to skip it, and no one would have even known it was in the show. But now it's out there for the whole world to hear about. One more question at the running back position. We're going to beef this up a little bit. An RB2 that you would be a little bit wary about starting this week. What do you got? If you're nodding away, Funston, why don't you take this one first?
It's my guy. I think it's got to be Josh Jacobs. He's a guy that I still have ranked RB2, and it's begrudging. I mean, I think we have to assume he's still a little bit hurt, not 100% healthy. I mean, his yards per carry way down. He's kind of James Conner right now, where he's sort of touchdown dependent, or Latavius Murray, where it's sort of touchdown dependent because there's just not a whole lot of upside with the rushing yards and really in the passing game. So, that's
but Peyton Barber's out now, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to say nobody. I know that's not what you want, but nobody. It's good. But here's why. Go to my intro of my column for the ranks this week. You cannot have too many running backs.
No one reads those.
Yeah, I know. You can't have too many running backs. Stop trying to trade away your third-level running back, which is like a Damian Harris, and then your next man up is like A.J. Dillon. We have buys starting next week in Week 6. You can't have enough running backs. But I'm saying that to answer this question, too, is if you have a top 25 running back, just start. Like, we're already thinned out. We're already talking about no Chris Carson this week, potentially no we're already at the point now where I think, wow, Beller, you would have to probably get down to like 30, 35 before you start saying like who should be
twice about someone.
Yeah, who should be on your bench.
Yeah, it's definitely a thin place in the running back world.
Oh, don't forget, London's this week for everybody to set your lineups. Yeah, don't forget.
9:30 a.m. Eastern time, the Jets and the Falcons kicking off in London. Just
sorry,
London. Our
Yeah.
finest exports to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this weekend. Let's get to wide receiver, guys. That's a position that has not thinned out at all, unless maybe you have both these guys on your team, Robert Woods and Allen Robinson. I know all of us are expecting much better days ahead for these guys. We got some talk about Robert Woods, maybe a squeaky wheel situation finally this week. Allen Robinson, plenty of reason to believe arrows up for him with Justin Fields, now the locked-in starter. Either of these guys, Jake, benchable this week?
Benchable is quite possible. I'm actually surprised. I thought I was still going to be higher than most on both of them, and apparently I'm under consensus on both of them. Really comes down to, Robert Woods, he got the nice Sean McVay. We need to get him more involved, but okay, sure. Why didn't you get him more involved the first 4 games? It's not because he wasn't. That's where I'm going is like McVay's wrong in what he's saying. I know he's trying to say that to sound nice, but Robert Woods has still been on the field the second most. He's still been targeted the second most. He still has the second most in red zone, which is something we always talked about that he doesn't get, and end zone targets. Matthew Stafford's looking his way. They're just not connecting. So it's more of, you could say, regression to the mean in the fact that he should be more productive on the opportunities he's getting, and that should work right when you're talking about the level of Stafford and Woods. But Van Jefferson is still out there a ton. They're still running a 3 wide a hell of a lot more than they did, and you have a running back like Darrell Henderson. I think it can get better, but he's not going to be top 15 like people had hoped that Stafford would turn him into this year. I think he's more now in the 20 to 25 range, which is still fine, but he's not benchable. Allen Robinson's more benchable, in my opinion. He caught all 3 of his targets last week. But Justin Fields and his arm, as we just saw, is better for Mooney. I actually think Andy Dalton and that Andy Dalton offense would be better for Allen Robinson's style in this offense.
I'm just going to weigh in on the Robert Woods thing. It's like, there's something I was saying early on Cooper Kupp as he's getting dominating so many of the targets, was that eventually defenses are going to adjust to that, and you wonder, it's hard to tell in just watching the game without watching the coach's tape and really seeing how the schemes were working. But it didn't seem easy last week for Cooper Kupp, yet Stafford still targeted him 13 times, but he only caught 5 balls. Terrible percentage. So you're wondering now, okay, maybe is this going to work to Robert Woods' favor as Matt Stafford starts to realize that, you're going to get a little bit more yellow and red lights going to Cooper Kupp than you had in the first few weeks.
Let's stay on Allen Robinson for a second here and bring in another guy who I already wanted to talk about. We're going to do it through a question from Gandalf305. Would you trade Allen Robinson for Laviska Shenault? So let's take that question, Funston, and then let's also talk about what I wanted to talk about with respect to Viska, which is with DJ Chark out, what do you got to see from him to feel like he's someone who you are starting as a default starter in leagues where you have him?
Well, with Laviska, it's always been about consistency. Do the cool stuff and the good stuff that you did last week. Do it again the next week, and then the next week, or you do something close. He's flashes, and then he just goes away. I mean, he's in a great position now with DJ Chark out. You look at his average depth of target last week. I know he had that one big play, but it's been going up every week. He went from 4 at the beginning of the year to 5 point something to 6 point something to last week 13 point something, and you start to think, okay, maybe he's not going to have to live around the line of scrimmage as much anymore with DJ Chark out. Would I trade? Look, this is 101 of no. You don't sell Allen Robinson at a low for Laviska Shenault at a high coming off a good game last week. I'm not ready to pull the trigger on this yet. I still think that if Justin Fields settles in, got the big arm, people talk about, he's going to be better for Darnell Mooney and Andy Dalton will be better for Allen Robinson. Well, Allen Robinson can still play the vertical game and take advantage of Justin Fields' big arm as well. So I'm going to ride this one out with Allen Robinson a little bit longer.
Agreed.
All right, Jake, obviously you let's talk about this because you're starting DeAndre Hopkins, Jake. Obviously you're starting DeAndre Hopkins, but I was going through your rankings and wide receiver 17. It's still a comfortable starter. He's still DeAndre Hopkins, but what's up with wide receiver 17 for DeAndre Hopkins on a team that rolls out of bed and puts up 31 points?
He hates
What's
DeAndre
up with
Hopkins.
that?
He hates him.
Ooh-wee. What's up with that? What's up with that? We think they bring that back.
Put him in the group with Kareem Hunt, guys that he hates.
Yeah, I hate Kareem Hunt and DeAndre Hopkins. They're the worst players ever.
Two least favorite players in the NFL. We all know it.
Yeah, so really what it comes down to is just the team target percentage of what DeAndre Hopkins has turned into. It's actually our worst fears. It's what actually a lot of people said this was the concern with Hopkins last year, and it wasn't right, and now it is. It's the fact he hasn't even have a 20% of the team's target on the year so far. Granted, week 3, kind of a decoy-ish. If you take that out, he's still barely only over 20%. It has nothing to do with DeAndre Hopkins not being one of the best receivers in the NFL. It just has to do with what the Cardinals' offense is now. And the Cardinals' offense is DeAndre Hopkins, Rondell Moore, Christian Kirk, A.J. Green, James Conner, Chase Edmonds, and Max Williams. They have 7 guys involved any given week. And you could say, okay.
And Kyler running for a touchdown in 3 of the first 4 games.
Right. That's not even getting to that. But the point being is, like, even if you take out 2, you're still down to 5. And that's really what it comes down to. I like DeAndre Hopkins, but he's going against San Francisco, and it just has to do with the fact that it's DeAndre Hopkins at an 18 to 20% target share where it used to be 24-25. If you said, hey, Jake, he's getting 25% of the targets this week, I'd say put him at 7 or 8. And that's really what it comes down to.
You know, if Jake had DJ Moore, A.J. Brown, and Deebo Samuel on a team with DeAndre Hopkins, he wouldn't start DeAndre Hopkins. So
that is true.
There you go.
You know what's common about those guys?
Got that team. Someone's got that.
I was gonna say, you know what's common about those guys is the friggin' target share that those are getting.
Yeah.
DJ Moore, just like Cooper Kupp, double-digit targets every single week.
Yeah. Unbelievable with the way they've been funneling him the ball. And I mean, did it last week even with Robbie Anderson getting 11 himself. Right, and I know that
what did Robbie
Carolina
catch, like
was
4?
Yeah, 5, 4 or 5, yeah, something like that. But it was a concerted
Why couldn't he even gotten that touchdown?
Joe Person, speaking to him earlier, Carolina Panthers beat writer at The Athletic, said that was deliberate. They wanted to get him more involved. They still want to get him more involved. So take that.
I thought you said. I thought when you said deliberate was the fact that they didn't get the touchdown. It's like,
yeah,
they wanted to leave that one.
Missed him on purpose. No, the 11 targets was deliberate. They want to get him more. They wanted to get him more involved last week, and they want to get him more involved going forward.
Matt Rule was given the no touchdown sign for Robbie Anderson.
No. Hey, jokes aside, as we're all laughing, real quick, I want to say this is like I was on the firm buy low on Robbie Anderson. I've cooled off on that a little bit because you're right. They wanted to get him involved, but you know what happened? Sam Darnold happened. It's like just the connection wasn't there. And yes, that touchdown and that one missed play could change everything. But that kind of concerted effort, and he got double-digit targets. He's not getting double-digit targets every single week. So Robbie Anderson.
Especially with CMC on the way back.
Yeah, boom bust wide receiver 3/4, really, at this point.
All right, let's go head-to-head for a second here. I think this one still holds. Jake much higher on Odell Beckham. Jake's got him wide receiver 29, Brandon wide receiver 36. So in our very loose
mine backed up a little bit when I updated this morning, but I'm still ahead.
Yeah, you're still ahead.
Yeah.
You're still ahead. Don't mess with me here, Jake. First full show back. The brain is operating at like 80% capacity.
I'm trying not to mess with the people who go to the website and be like, I thought you said 29. So it's just a heads up.
Like Beckham better. Brandon, he's barely inside your top 36. Barely a wide receiver 3 for you. Jake, we can still say safely a wide receiver 3 for you. So let's hear the pro Beckham case.
The pro Beckham case is what actually we were just talking about with Robbie Anderson. It's just imagine if Baker Mayfield had any touch on that throw last week. Hey, you know what's funny? Is if he would have thrown a duck like Trey Lance, Odell Beckham could have caught it and ran like Debo did after the catch and potentially scored a touchdown. It has to do with, throwing. But really what it comes down to, Odell Beckham is top 10 in unrealized air yards for everybody out there. It's the air yards thrown your way versus your receiving yards. He's still getting all the volume, all the opportunity, all the big plays that Odell Beckham is. He's just been slightly off on the same page as Baker Mayfield, which is something that's actually been the entire career of Baker and Odell together. We've talked about it last year, is the fact that forcing it to Odell was a problem for Baker. So it really comes down to, just like Robbie Anderson, the quarterback is the problem. Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield are the problems here. However, volume, and that's really what it comes down to. There is nobody else to really throw the ball to until Jarvis Landry gets back.
Yeah, and then the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I mean, this is Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham. The last 19 games, regular season games, Odell hasn't had more than 87 yards in a game. Most of the time, it's like 50. It's right in that range. He's found the end zone in just 5 of those 19 games. Baker Mayfield has one of the worst adjusted completion percentages in the league. He's not an accurate quarterback. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback.
So here's what it'll come down to, is another part of the intro of my article, Funston, and not coming for you, I'm for like people that when I'm trying to decide between a wide receiver 3 and 4 level guy in my lineup, Odell Beckham is, I'm going to chase the ceiling more times than not. Now, I want to, for everybody out there, if my top 2 wide receivers are like Tyler Lockett and Marquise Brown, who are both boom or bust already, I'm not putting in Beckham. I would put in a Chenault or a Pittman or somebody like that, like where the floor is that I offset my risk. But if my top 2 wide receivers are locked in, steady, one of them's Keenan Allen, that type of thing, then I'm going Odell Beckham. And that's really what it comes down to. So I don't disagree with you that much, Funston. It's just I'm going for the upside of what Beckham can bring.
Yeah, I agree to you. And I factored in the matchup as well. I mean, the Chargers have held Terry McLaurin, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Henry Ruggs. They've held them all at bay. I mean, they've done a really good job. It's a lot easier when you're facing Cleveland to say, okay, it's Odell here. Where you're facing Dallas, like, we got Cooper and Lamb. So I think that's going to be a further problem for Odell this week.
Brandon Staley, the fantasy world's favorite coach, doing a good job on the defensive side of the ball, as well as we would expect, considering that's where he made his bones and got his way to a head coaching job on the defensive side of the ball. Let's make a case for someone, guys. Here we go. 4 more players. We're going to select them all here at random. Let's see. This is a good one. Jake, why don't you take this one? It is another Cardinal for you. AJ Green. Make the case.
Because his life has been resuscitated. He is off life support. He got the paddles. He is back to living in the fantasy world and the real life world. He pulled the Larry Fitzgerald. It just took him 2 weeks to get there, because the past 2 weeks, he's honestly on the heels. Go back to the target share and everything like that type of stuff. He's on the heels of Hopkins. Again, I know I'm factoring in week 3 was the fact that Hopkins was a decoy, but you can't take away from, if you just watched the game, forget metrics and all that type of stuff, you just watched, you would sit there and say AJ Green is the second most effective wide receiver on this team. And I say explosive, I'm saying effective, because he's out there the second most on Hopkins' heels. He's seeing the second most opportunities, and when he's getting those opportunities, he's been productive, and he's scoring touchdowns. And AJ Green, is he 3-4 years ago AJ Green? No, but 90% of what, and we're talking about AJ Green was one of the best receivers in the game. So I'm fine with AJ Green. AJ Green, until further notice, is the second highest of all Cardinals wide receivers, ahead of Kirk, ahead of trying to figure out Rondell Moore and all that type of stuff. I think you can start him most weeks.
There you go. And just doing the path that so many regular people do, right? He's in the Midwest his whole career, goes down to Arizona and finds some new life there. It's a beautiful path for AJ Green. All right, Funston, here's your guy. Let's go with, that's good. Oh boy, I dropped it.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. Oh, no, I just lost an AirPod.
It's a
Think
bad
Pat's
omen
head
for
falling
it's a
off.
bad omen
Manny
for my
Sanders.
guy. Oh, it's a
Manny
bad omen for
Sanders is your
Manny
guy.
Sanders.
No.
Weirdly, kind of similar to AJ Green, old 30-something wide receiver finding new life with a new team.
Oh, Manny Sanders. I thought they said
Manny
Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, and living in the shadow of an alpha receiver and living well.
Yeah.
I mean, behind Stephon Diggs, I think like AJ Green, Sanders has at least 6 targets in every game. He's in one of the most highly, high volume pass attacks in the league, and he's putting up solid production week in and week out. Found the end zone a couple times a couple weeks ago, but he's getting 50, 60, 70 yards most weeks. And this week in particular, I really like him because he's going against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are giving up a ton of big plays. Manny Sanders is averaging 16.8 yards per catch, which is easily his career high. So yeah, I think he's kind of settled in as the number 2. Some weeks Cole Beasley is going to bubble up, but I think, over the long haul, Manny Sanders looks like the guy that I would rather have than Cole Beasley and be like the second guy in this offense in the passing attack behind Diggs.
All right, guys, we got to cut something here. You want to go happy or sad and wide receiver? Go happy or sad Panda? 10 things. Let's go. Let's go sad. Just 'cause you guys just made a case for someone. So let's go the opposite direction. A wide receiver 3 who belongs on benches in week 5. Brandon, what do you got? Jake, what do you got?
I'm looking for a wide receiver. I'll tell you. Wow, I'm trying to find one.
Oh, I got one.
Okay,
go
ahead.
Yes, take it away.
Devonte Smith. I think we're recency biasing this one with him. You look at Devonte Smith, and I just look at Carolina with Jalen Hurts. You got to feel good about him kind of being protected and being able to kind of get into a rhythm in the passing game. And Carolina is one of the best defenses in terms of sacks, getting pressure. They're coming off a bad loss on the road to Dallas. They get to go home. I just don't like it. I mean, we've seen 2 good games from Devonta Smith. We've seen 2 bad games. And I feel like this is the potential to be on the bad side based upon the setup with the defense, with Jalen Hurts. It's nothing against Devonta Smith, but I think Jalen Hurts is going to have one of those just off games because he can't get himself into a rhythm.
Yeah, so you know what? I hate to do it, but I'm going to just echo Funston on this one. And this is from a Devonte Smith fan. This is somebody that said last week he was top 5 in unrealized air yards, and he's still top 5 even after that game because of how much the big play is going his way. Mm-hmm. But all that being said is even before Carolina, even before Stefan Gilmore, who's not in this game, is the Carolina Panthers are 6th in expected opportunities for wide receivers in general, but also part of it is because they are limiting the big play to wide receivers. So that's something you could do. If you look at that skill set in that secondary, they can sit back and leave somebody hanging back where Devonte Smith can't get over the top of them. And if you're going to limit Devonte Smith getting over the top of you, I'm not saying it's a bad day, but you could be looking at a 3 for 60 versus a 5 or 6 for 110.
Interesting game, certainly, between those 2 teams, Carolina and Philly. I mean, I don't know. I asked the question earlier. I just feel like Philly's still sort of living on that 32-6 game against Atlanta, at least in the gambling market. And, it's like, well, who cares about that game? And, 17-11 loss to the 49ers, even what looked like a pretty good, quote, good loss then is sort of a, well, who cares? And Carolina, meanwhile, has been a relatively impressive team through the first month of the season. So interested.
Carolina Survivor?
Definitely not in Survivor, Jake, but against the spread, that could be something that I think about. Excited for sure to watch that one. There's a specialist for just about everything when my car breaks down. Actually, I do have my car getting a tire patch right now, right? So you take it to a mechanic, or in my case, you take it to a tire place. When there's a problem with the shower, call the plumber. So when you want to get your uneven, crooked teeth fixed, you see an orthodontist. They are the specialists, and that's what sets Candid, the invisible, comfortable, and removable aligners above the rest. While poorly reviewed or insanely priced clear aligner companies use general dentists, Candid only works with orthodontists. With Candid, the same orthodontist who creates your plan is with you from start to finish, so you never have to wonder how you are doing. Treatment is prescribed and closely monitored remotely by that licensed orthodontist who is an expert in tooth movement. You can book an appointment at a Candid studio near you or do everything from the comfort and convenience of your home. The average Candid treatment, just 6 months, and you'll start seeing results way before that, and it costs thousands less than traditional braces. And also, you'll get Candid's teeth whitening treatment for free. Candid can help you get the straighter, brighter smile you've always wanted. Right now, you can save $75 on your Candid starter kit when you get started from home or book an appointment at a Candid studio near you. Go to candidco.com/fantasy and then use the code fantasy. That's candidco.com/fantasy, code fantasy to get $75 off your Candid starter kit. If you've been looking for areas where you can save money, you might have overlooked your auto insurance. When you go down that road, Gabby is here to help. Shopping for auto insurance can suck, and Gabby gets it, and that's why they do all the work for you. Things that would take days or weeks even, Gabby can do for you in just minutes. Gabby uses your current policy to compare your current coverage with 40 of the top insurance providers like Nationwide and Travelers. They're the one true comparison platform with fast, verifiable quotes, not ballpark guesses. And because Gabby uses your current coverage, they only show policies that are the same or better than that current coverage, many of them at a lower price. Gabby is free to use, and they never sell your info, so no annoying spam or robocalls. Gabby's been featured in TechCrunch, Forbes, and USA Today. You can start saving on your auto insurance today. Just go to Gabby.com/fantasy to start saving. Totally free. That's GABI.com/fantasy. Gabby.com/fantasy. All right, guys, we're going to talk tight ends for once because we had a few guys emerge last week that if people are looking for tight end help, maybe some of them over the last couple of weeks, they could potentially buy into them. So we got the same question. Are we buying blank? First one, Funston. We buying Dawson Knox?
We are, and Jake, for the reasons Jake's mentioned, I think on the Monday show, is that he is a guy that Josh Allen's looking for in the red zone, and this is a team that scores a lot of points, and it's easy to imagine that won't go away if that's the case. I mean, it's like when you're talking about the area of the tight end ranks where Dawson Knox lives, and you're trying to decide between people, you're going to follow the guy that has, touchdown upside. Because most times from tight end, if you get the touchdown, doesn't matter what else they do, you're good. And that's what Dawson Knox provides, and a little bit more.
Jake, are we buying Dalton Schultz?
Kind of, yes. Well, it really comes down to is, at least for now, until Michael Gallup comes back, maybe. My biggest hesitancy here is that it's still almost a split with Blake Jarwin, but similar to O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate back before Rob Gronkowski, is the split was there, but who's running more routes? And it's not – Jarwin's still running plenty in his own right. It's just Schultz is always out there, and he's always being involved, and Dak is looking his way, similar to Dawson Knox. And I might even for this week, I actually lean a little bit more Schultz than Knox for this week because he's less touchdown reliant than Knox is, because Knox is still, 30, 40, maybe 50 yards. At least Schultz is getting you like 50, 60 a lot of weeks on top of it.
All right, one more. Brandon, are we buying Mike Gesicki?
Well, the problem here is that it's been all Jacoby Brissett. He did nothing.
There you go.
He did nothing with Tua. So as long as Jacoby's out there, I'm buying Mike Gesicki. As long as they have, Will Fuller's missing time and they don't have a full complement of people out there, I'm buying Gesicki. But it's TBD once Tua comes back. So obviously buying now, and then you got to hope that when Tua comes back, he can keep the Gesicki thing going, but it was nothing with Tua. It was literally 2 targets for 0 yards, I believe, in week 1. So, we gotta pump the brakes a little bit, knowing that Tua is around the corner.
All right, guys. 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. One more question for you before we wrap up the show here, Jake. What's Monday's fantasy football headline?
Should Trey Lance remain quarterback? We're going to get this. He's going to have a really nice game, and they're going to be like, should we even put Jimmy Garoppolo back, which the San Francisco 49ers, I still believe, or 100% are doing as soon as he's healthy. This is not going to be Justin Fields because the talent disparity is, for winning purposes, is still Garoppolo. So the headlines are going to be, is Trey Lance the answer? Is Trey Lance the future? Blah, 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 Trey Lance.
I think
Funston, what do you got?
The answer could be so badly no. I really think Trey Lance has the potential to be a real crap show. Like that Arizona defense, with what I saw last week for Trey Lance, I think there could be like some really bad picks, some really like guffaw kind of like plays that you're just watching on highlight reel over and over. Just some hilarious kind of like, highlight reel plays there. But to go somewhere else, I guess I'll say the talk is going to be the 41-38 Bills win over the Chiefs, Josh Allen over Pat Mahomes. I think there's potential for upwards of 70-plus points in that game in a real shootout.
Chiefs have gone comfortably over in every single game so far this season. My fantasy headline for Monday, the buy low window on Allen Robinson has slammed shut after he goes for 130-2 in the Bears, at least keeping it close, at least staying within the 5.5-point spread against the Raiders in Vegas on Sunday. That's it. That's my headline. That's Jake's headline. That's Funston's headline. And that is this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. You want to get a subscription to the Athletic? Guess what? You can do so for 50% off on your first year. Go to theathletic.com/fantasyfootballpod to get that. For Jake and Funston, I am Michael Beller. The three of us back with you on Monday to look back at this and see if we're right about the headlines. This show returns on Friday. Me, Vic Tafer, and Zach Jackson taking a look at the slate from a gambling perspective. I will talk to you then. The three of us will talk to you Monday. Have a great weekend. Let's go get some fantasy W's.